All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chip Chat. I am here with my guy, Jose, who is with me today. We're going to be discussing everything in the world of semiconductors and AI in relation to semiconductors, chips, all that good stuff. That's why we're called Chip Chat. There's a lot of new subscribers on this channel as for the past couple of days, obviously, because we've seen Palantir go on a pretty astronomical run. Other companies have gone on astronomical runs, and they're in the AI space, the chip space, and this is a podcast that hopefully you guys enjoy over the next couple of, I don't know, months, years that we end up doing this, where we're going to be covering the semiconductor industry, chip industry, all that good stuff. First of all, Jose, how are you doing? How's your week been?
Most of the week has been pretty good. I mean, obviously, as an NVIDIA shareholder, when it's green, I'm happy, and it's been a crazy green week. Like I mentioned earlier on, my little one actually got sick last night, so I got like 4 hours of sleep in the past 48 hours. So outside, luckily he's feeling better, but that's been the downturn of my week so far.
So when your little one gets sick, why don't you get sleep? What exactly is the reason you're not allowed to sleep as a dad?
Well, I think usually, I mean, first time dad here. So for me, it was he tends to not sleep alone when he's sick. I guess he's uncomfortable and he likes to sleep on dad. So I'm pretty much awake most of the time, just holding him while he gets a pretty good sleep while he's resting.
And how old is he?
He's about to turn 9 months. So
And
yeah,
how
pretty fresh into the dad.
how tall are you?
I'm 5'7", 5'7", 5'8",
Okay,
around
cool,
there.
cool. I thought you were there. I'm 5'7", 5'8" as well. So okay, interesting. So basically, and your wife couldn't sleep either. You're saying both of you couldn't sleep.
Yeah, no, we take turns, especially just being paranoid first parents. We want to make sure everything's okay every 10 seconds or so.
Dude, if I was in that situation and my kid couldn't stop crying, I would just have him and like make sure he tries to go to sleep. But I would have my phone up. I'd be looking at my NVIDIA just go up. I would just be like, you better shut the fuck up because we're daddy's gonna make you rich one day. So that'd be hilarious, man. Okay, let's talk. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. We got ARM, we got NVIDIA, we got my fucking legs that can't believe that ARM is going up so much. We also have SMCI. Let's start off with them. Why the hell is SMCI up 170% year to date? Is there a bubble here? $745 doesn't really make sense. What is your take on SMCI?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we talked about it last week where you asked me if I believe there was an AI bubble, and I think last week I probably said no. And now I'm starting to debate my thoughts. I think in certain industry, and after I saw ARM Holdings, I believe in certain stocks we are seeing maybe a bubble to some extent. Where I mean SMCI, I think if you're looking at next 12 months PE ratio is still below 30 to some extent. So in forms of valuation, it's not too crazy compared to the overall market. But I feel like if this wasn't the AI space that we're seeing right now, people wouldn't be paying that type of valuation for that company. I mean, Supermicro, definitely pretty big player. With a lot of growth opportunities outside of just being your typical server that's building a lot of AI solutions. One of the big things that they're doing is liquid cooling. And what's very important here is we're getting to these chips that are becoming so power hungry, where we're talking about 1,000+ watts chips. And for chips like that to be in data centers, you're going to be spending a lot of money on keeping those chips cool. I believe data centers right now spend roughly 30% on the electricity bill just on keeping their chips cool. So Supermicro is working on something to kind of do liquid cooling, which in theory should help reduce a lot of that electricity bill. So they definitely have a lot of kind of growth opportunities going into the future. But I don't know, this run up, I'm not a super micro shareholder, so maybe you can say I'm a little upset that I'm not, but I believe right now valuations are getting a little crazy for super micro.
Dude, the stock is up 170% in 2 months, less than 2 months. 5 years, obviously. I mean, it looks like a shit coin, right? When you look at it looks like Dogecoin back in 2021. 2023, it was at $70, right? Around this December or around this March, February 2023. And then we just got this hockey puck. And like, I want to say that this is what a bubble looks like in the context of valuations. Obviously, the float is only 55 million shares. And it's shorted about 10%. It's one of the more shorted stocks on Wall Street. So you got 5 million shares sold short, 55 million in the float. it does feel like their growth justifies a decent premium. And if you look at their valuation, it's not even that crazy of a premium. Market cap's at 40 billion. They're going to do about 15 billion in revenue. But they do have hardware margins, as you said. There are growth opportunities, as you said, in the context of liquid cooling and things of that nature. But it's not an NVIDIA. It's not GPU. It's not software margin. So I guess my question to you then on SMCI is, do you think for that one, the bubble pops badly? Or if NVIDIA keeps going, and we'll talk about them in a second, that one just keeps falling with NVIDIA, or keeps going up with NVIDIA?
I think right now it will definitely keep following that NVIDIA train. I mean, another thing that they have to them is they are still very small in forms of market and they have capacity issues. So if they can keep growing that capacity and that revenue growth can continue at these levels, they're also expanding into building some of their manufacturing off in Malaysia, I believe. I forget what Southeast Asian country, but obviously kind of moving some of your manufacturing over there can also improve margins to some extent, which can obviously kind of benefit investors and earnings per share. So I think right now, as long as this NVIDIA train keeps going, I think Supermicro will be right behind it. And actually, right now, if you look at year to date, Supermicro is actually leading the train, right? They're the drivers of this train right now.
And again, for people that don't know what they do, they make the packaging for the chip that goes into the hardware that NVIDIA creates, correct?
So no, so Supermicro, what they do is NVIDIA finishes the chip. So NVIDIA has this complete product, but it's only a chip. It's not a full computer to some extent or servers. So what they end up doing is they grab this complete package of NVIDIA, these H100s, and they kind of build these servers, which are pretty much just high performance computing. And then they build those servers that get sent out to the data centers like your Google Cloud, your Amazon. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of competitors in this space. There's obviously some kind of perks with Supermicro. They're a little bit faster. They're more, you can do more customizable compared to maybe your typical legacy player like Dell. But I personally, right, obviously wrong here, but I personally don't believe that customizationable and the liquid cooling that are worth that valuation that is currently at right now.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about another one that had an incredible week. We all, okay, I'm not going to say that because maybe we all don't. I was going to say we all have two arms, but there's definitely some people in the world that don't have two arms. But maybe they don't even have any arms. But nonetheless, this company, ARM, just had a hell of a week. ARM Holdings added 40 billion in market cap in 24 hours. Now it is $118 billion market cap. It was 78 billion right before. Apparently, this company has 90 million shares outstanding, outstanding in the float. And there's a billion by SoftBank, but those are locked up. There's some founder IPO shares that are locked up 56% year to date. Most of that 50% literally happened 2 days ago. And they guided for 3.6 billion in revenue, 3.2 billion, market cap 120 billion, probably going to do about 850 million of net profits. What the hell is ARM, and why did the market chase it this week?
So ARM, I'm pretty sure most people, when they hear of CPUs, they hear the CPU is the brain of the computer. I think that's kind of a common thought that many people hear about. Well, the way these brains get hardwired is based on some instruction sets. And right now in the market, there's two main instruction sets. There's three, but there's only really two that are dominant. First is your x86. And your x86 instruction sets are the ones that are used by AMD and Intel. So no one else can use x86 except those two players. Then there's another instruction set, and that is ARM. And ARM licenses their instruction sets so other people can make CPUs for the overall market. A big customer of ARM is Apple. So Apple goes to ARM and says, hey, look, we want to license your instruction set and we want to make chips out of them. So Apple makes their own chips, and then they pay ARM some form of licensing fee, and a royalty fee. So initially, ARM was mainly known for their chips being good for low performance and high power efficiency. So they were really good for the mobile market, and that's why I want to say 99% of your chips in the phone or the CPU in the phone are an ARM-based chip. But right now, we are getting huge development in this market that we're seeing this kind of transform into your cloud computing market, into your high performance market. So we're seeing a lot of big players license ARM's kind of instruction set and design their own chips. For example, NVIDIA has a CPU, the Gray CPU, and that Gray CPU is actually using ARM's instruction sets. Another one is Amazon. Amazon also has a CPU. It's called the Graviton that is also using ARM's base instruction set. And there's a
So
lot of
ARM
big
is making the architecture for these CPUs, essentially the design.
yeah, yeah, so they make the architecture, and they also go a step above. They can sometimes even pre-make um, building blocks of these chips. Let's say designing a chip is 100 levels. You can either go to level 1 and start from the beginning and design your own chip, but that will cost a lot of money. ARM can actually speed up the process. You might be like, hey, I want to start at level 50 instead of level 1. So ARM has created kind of building blocks, and you can kind of get those building blocks from ARM, so you can even make your chips a little bit faster and get to the market a lot faster. Microsoft just announced their CPU, the Cobalt 100, and that one was pretty much created all with ARM. So ARM has this pretty cool kind of technological advancement in chip design, and we're seeing a lot of big push from outside the mobile space. We're getting these high performing cloud players, like I mentioned, but we're also seeing them in things like automotive and robotics. So there's definitely a growth opportunity here for them.
Okay, now does the from a business perspective, 3.2 billion in revenue, $120 billion market cap, does that make sense because they're a monopoly in some capacity, and that's why I know they were such a coveted IPO? Or like, I guess my question is, why is the street chasing these shares so deeply? Is it because they missed out on SMCI, or genuinely the valuation doesn't matter because they're a monopoly?
I don't know. For ARM, I mean, like you mentioned, SoftBank, the owner, still owns 90% of the share. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit of floats here.
Yeah.
I do believe to some extent is that kind of supply demand. There's not a lot of supply, and there's a lot of demand for shares. So that's really causing kind of stock price action to move into some extent. I was looking at their PE ratios, and for the next 24 months, not the next 12 months, the next 24 months, the PE ratio is still about 60. To me, I think that's a little bit hectic. It's not like ARM is a new company. They're a new IPO, but they've been around for a very, very long time. So they're mature to some extent. I do believe the market is getting a little bit excited about the AI craze right now, and maybe hoping that more companies are going to develop more chips, and they're going to be using ARM's products, and they're going to be paying ARM a licensing fee and a royalty fee. The company, they also kind of innovate their chips to next level. They're right
Mhm.
now on version 9, and they're saying that one of the big pushes is from version 9 to version 8. There's a lot more chips within that version. So in version 9, their customers are paying at least 2 times the royalty fee as version 8. And I guess many investors are wondering, hey, what happens when we go to version 10? What happens when we go to version 11? Are the royalty fees going to increase so much? Because right now, AI needs so many different CPUs, they need NPUs, they need so many different types of technology that ARM can license to all these players that can obviously help boost their royalty revenue. So there's definitely growth opportunity, but again, for me, I'm not sure if the valuation makes sense at these levels.
Let me ask you this last question on ARM. If the Apple Vision Pro was using ARM hypothetically, what would ARM be doing for the Vision Pro?
ARM, Apple makes in the Apple Vision. I believe there's 2 chips that Apple makes. I forget what are the names of those chips, but the instruction set within those chips are created by ARM.
What do you mean
Uh,
by
so
instruction set? What do you mean by that?
So I think the easiest way to think about it is the CPU is your brain, right? But inside your brain is is hardwired to some extent. And the hardwire of that brain is what ARM makes. And the main reason is, um, how can I explain this a little bit better?
It's kind of like the neurons in your brain that are firing off the nervous system. There's an architecture for how those
Yeah,
nerves
yeah.
operate.
So that's the instruction set that ARM makes, and the reason that you want to have I want to say just a single or maybe 2 instruction set is when a developer focuses on developing an app, they only need to focus on that instruction set. So
Right.
it's more how the CPU reacts to certain instructions, to certain code. So the main reason there's only 2 players is if you're a software developer, you're going to make your software kind of optimized for x86 and for ARM, because if you have 1,000 different instruction sets, a software developer or app developer wouldn't know where to work with. So ARM is the second biggest kind of instruction set in high performance computing. So Apple has designed their chips using that instruction set. It's a little bit tricky to think about, but it's more just how the brain is hardwired. And right now, there's only two hardwired brains. There's the x86, which AMD and Intel have, and then there's the ARM hardwired brain, which a lot of other players use.
Got it. Yeah, this is really exciting to me. I mean, obviously, you don't own ARM, right? Or do you have some ARM?
I have to. Just kidding. No, I don't have. I don't own any
That's what
ARM.
I'm talking about, dude. Got the joke. I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't own any ARM, but I don't know if the royalty and licensing fee is for me. And that's the main reason I really haven't really looked into buying into this stock.
Gotcha. Okay, for everyone in the chat who's like, "Who the hell is Jose?" He has a degree in electrical engineering. He's actually in Jersey. He's been in Jersey with me, and he's an early investor in a lot of these semi companies. A lot of people are they're checking your credentials, Jose. They don't think you. They don't know who the hell you are. They're trying. Who the fuck is this guy talking?
I have a master's degree in electrical engineering. I kind of researched the semiconductor market a little bit too much. And I've worked in a lot of kind of innovative places before I started doing YouTube full time. One of my favorite places was my most recent at General Dynamics. And where I did there was a lot of kind of like research and development. It was more like a startup within a big giant. So I've seen a lot of these amazing technology that I'm investing in right now.
So for all of you thinking that Jose doesn't know what he's talking about, he just told y'all that he knows exactly what he's talking about. No, but seriously, he's a very successful YouTube channel and it's in the description, his Twitter as well. He's been researching this stuff much, much longer than I think a lot of us for the past 5 years, which is why he's sitting on a lot of gains in these companies that he's invested in before. Okay, go ahead. You were gonna say something?
Oh, I was going to say, I don't consider myself smart. I just put a lot of hard work and I'm always learning from other people. I follow a lot of people that are super smart and I just try to pick up as much as I can to kind of improve my overall knowledge in this space.
Okay, so someone who is smart would say they don't consider themselves smart, which is why you actually are smart. Now, I call myself smart every day on the market open, which is why I'm not very smart. And so that's the difference between me and you. Okay, let's transition to Sam Altman trying to get 7 trillion. Know what I'm talking about? Not 7 billion, 7 trillion. Okay, this is why he wants 7 trillion. Let's react to this and then we'll get into his new venture.
Venture that would boast the world's biggest chip building capacity. That's the focus of today's Tech Check segment with our Deirdre Bosa. What else do we know here, Deirdre?
Let me first just say that everything about this is just mind-boggling and huge in terms of ambition, scale, investment. This is like the moonshot of all moonshots. And here I'm going to use Google's definition. Something that sounds undoable, but if done, could redefine humanity. That is what Sam Altman is apparently working on here, which also means that this should all be taken with some amount of skepticism. A lot would have to fall into place. So let's just start with the number. According to the journal, this could require up to $7 trillion. That is 7 times the expected size of chip sales in 2030, more than 5 years away. It's more than the combined market caps of Apple and Microsoft. It is 7 million millions. And here it is written out, 12 zeros if you are counting. We had to make it big. Now, the project itself is aimed at reshaping the world's chip building capacity. No small feat. Altman is going after one of the most complex, expensive, and geopolitically sensitive industries in the world. And it is a project that would create an equally complex partnership between OpenAI, chip makers, investors, power providers, and governments. Now, the most interesting is perhaps the why. OpenAI and Altman, they're on a quest to develop AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which OpenAI defines as systems that are broadly smarter than humans and therefore have the ability to teach itself, thereby creating new, even potentially smarter AGIs. That will require vast amounts of chips already in short supply as the generative AI cycle gets more underway. So far, of course, Microsoft has been funding OpenAI's development to the tune of about $13 billion. That is potentially just a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. $7 trillion would require capital from even bigger sources than the mega caps, like sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East, with trillions of dollars in assets. And that raises one of many, many questions, guys. If semiconductors are an issue of national security, which we know they are, would you let Abu Dhabi, Middle Eastern nation states get a foothold? Other questions like the development of chips, something that is clearly very, very difficult to do. Everyone's been trying to create a GPU to rival that of NVIDIA's, and it's been tough going. Can Altman do it, even if he has the support of TSMC and others?
Okay, so I have a couple thoughts on this, and then I'll get your thoughts. 7 trillion is almost 1/3 of the U.S. GDP at about 21 trillion. Even raising 7 billion would be pretty absurd, because then the market cap of that company, you would imagine, would be somewhere between like 30, 40, 50 billion. I don't even know what a company looks like that raises 7 trillion. The market cap would be a bigger market cap than we've ever seen. And then obviously what they touched on in the video, the geopolitical concerns of this would be massive. There is no venture capitalist on the planet, even if you pulled in all the best venture capitalists that exist in America, that could fund something to the tune of 7 trillion. It's just not possible. They just don't have the capital. So you have to get the sovereign wealth funds. You have to get countries. You got to get the soft banks of the world and many, many other soft banks of the world. The Vision Fund is only $100 billion. This guy's looking for 7 trillion. So I guess the question here is, what do you think Sam Altman's motive is with looking for 7 trillion? Is it really for chips? Is it for something else? Is he trying to become the super cluster AI company of the world? Today he said ChatGPT spits out 100 billion words a day, but humans speak 100 trillion words a day. So what do you think he's trying to do? And do you think 7 trillion even makes sense in the context of what he's trying to build?
I mean, if he's just trying to make semiconductor manufacturing, I think that is absurd. With 7 trillion, I think you can buy every semiconductor company out there and still have money left over. So you can buy NVIDIA, which is a $1.7 trillion in the AI king. You can buy TSMC, which has a market cap of 5. I think if your goal is to be able to produce more chips, if there was a second TSMC to some extent, I think your problems would be solved. And a second TSMC would cost, right now, the market cap is about $600 billion. I don't think it would even cost that much to build the second TSMC. And like I explained, I think last episode, the AI bottleneck in forms of chip is not the actual wafer that is used. It's more the packaging. And that packaging needs very special technology, but it's not a $7 trillion endeavor. Again, I think even with 100 billion, he can definitely double the capacity of AI chips. It just takes more time than money to some extent. It will be something that will take a multiple year plan. So I think behind this, if he's really searching for $7 trillion, I think there's more AI investments outside of just AI chips out there. And what I'm really curious is Sam is going to speak at an Intel event on February 21st, where Intel's going to talk a little bit about manufacturing. Sam is actually going to be a keynote speaker there. So hopefully he gives us a more insight of what he's planning, so we can kind of figure it out. But I don't know. Those are big dreams that he's chasing right now. I don't think any of it is possible.
That's my thing, because we talked about this last week on Chip Chat, and you said that chips are not really the concern. Like, we have the chips. It's about the packaging, the designing, the architecture. There's so much to do when it comes to chips. It's not just, raw chips themselves. Now, 7 trillion to me sounds like he's looking for an end-to-end solution to the, I guess, supply issue, not just of chips, but the overall manufacturing of what chips are going to do in every sort of broad sector of the economy. My sort of conspiracy theory here is that I think he realizes, they just reported today on the journal, OpenAI did $2 billion in revenue last year. Companies valued at $100 billion, right? So it's a little pricey there. I think he's realizing that unless they have a moat outside of the LLM that is commoditized, right? Like, there's so many different LLMs that exist, they have no other way to justify the value. Do you think that's where he's thinking? Which is like, I don't just want to own ChatGPT. I want to own everything that is involved in making ChatGPT, which is the computing, which is where NVIDIA is getting the valuation. And if NVIDIA is getting the valuation that way, then I need to also get the chips.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but it does make sense. I mean, large language models right now are definitely, to some extent, going to become commodity. At least right now, I mean, we've seen huge competition from Google. Just released their Gemini Ultra, and we've kind of seen solutions out there from open source solutions that are kind of rivaling the paid version of ChatGPT 4. So I think he might be trying to find another avenue where his AI solutions can grow. And unfortunately, right now, like we keep talking, the GPU is the supply constraint. So I'm pretty sure Sam Altman and his team can kind of do a lot more with their AI, but they just don't have the computational power. And at the end of the day, I do believe for where we're at right now, the lack of GPU supply is creating some form of I guess it's making competition a little bit easier in this space because everybody's able to catch up because everybody has the GPU supply constraint. But if one player had an infinite amount of GPUs, their acceleration in this space could be dramatically faster than other
Right.
places, and it would make valuations go crazily insane.
Right. Some of the comments here, Beanstalk use says he's going vertical integration type deal. I agree. The other thing about the thing that he's doing here in the context of vertical integration is I think he's also realizing that if he doesn't figure his own end-to-end solution, he's probably always going to be giving up the majority of the profits to the computing companies or the hyperscalers. And, this is actually transitioned just well into an interesting take by Gene Munster this week. You probably haven't heard it, but the argument was Meta is one of the better AI plays because they're going to start monetizing Llama. And as a result of monetizing Llama, they're going to turn into their own cloud infrastructure play. And they're going to be doing their own type of cloud computing for the clients that potentially use Llama. And that's how they kind of compete with AWS and Google. It's a little bit of a stretch. But do you think that has any argument? Sam Altman's trying to do it. Maybe Zucks finds a way that's the next way Meta grows if they just become a hyperscaler?
Yeah, so I mean, Zuck has invested so much money in the AI market. It's insane the amount of H100s and GPUs they're developing. And I personally follow to some extent the open source AI market, and they continue to release a lot of open source solutions. And I believe during the earnings call, Mark mentioned that the reason he's going to this open source is because it's helping them develop a lot faster. They're able to get kind of all the data points from all these other players that are developing within their solution, and it helps them improve their solution even more. So Mark right now has definitely hit a home run with AI and with the AI infrastructure. And I do believe with the open source that he's doing, it's going in the right direction. So I think OpenAI definitely feels the competition from not just Google, but Meta definitely has the opportunity to kind of win in this space right now.
Right. Okay, let's transition to what Reuters reported, which was NVIDIA's new chip business, or at least what they're trying to do with their new chip. What are the updates on that? And is that a reason you think the stock pumped another 10% this week? By the way, NVIDIA is $20 billion away from being as valuable as Amazon. So do you think that rumor, and what is the rumor that got you to think that maybe that's what helped them moon?
Yeah, so NVIDIA, I'm just pulling up their Investor Day presentation from 2022. So I'm not sure if you can pull up the actual report here. So, but it
From
was,
Reuters?
I think so, but I think CNBC actually also shared it. So if you just put NVIDIA custom silicon, it might explain a little bit better. So
Okay.
right now, one of the biggest kind of bear tactics or bear thesis for NVIDIA is that a lot of these big tech giants like Amazon, like Microsoft, and all these other players are developing their own AI solutions because they're trying to escape the crazy prices that NVIDIA is making. Right, so they're all developing their own GPU, their own ASIC solutions. So what this new report mentions that NVIDIA is actually going to create a unit where they're going to actually help these big tech players design their own chips. And the reason I think that's luckily for us, this is not the first time we've heard about it. And let me see if I can share my screen really quick. Share
This is
screen.
actually very interesting because if you don't want them to compete with you, how about you monetize them?
Yeah. So am I sharing my screen right now?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, so this was 2 years ago. NVIDIA kind of talked about their semi-custom chips, and we've heard about it in about 2 years ago, and then it kind of went flat for some time. So what NVIDIA believes is that they've created this way where chips can kind of talk with each other, and it's called NVLink. That's the way that the GPU and the CPU can talk to each other at a really, really fast rate, and that's very, very important. So what NVIDIA was proposing in 2022 is, hey, look, some random customer can come to us, they can design their own chip. And then after designing their own chip, they can come to us and maybe license our GPUs. Maybe we still are the kings of GPUs and they want to use our chip inside their chip to create a mega chip, for example. And I do believe this is a great way, a great thing for NVIDIA because it kind of they're the ones that start cannibalizing their own market to some extent. So NVIDIA is always going to be in the picture of the big tech giants. The other thing is NVIDIA is a huge, huge software company, and they make a nice amount of money from their software solutions, which are optimized for their hardware products. So if let's say Meta in the future designs their own chip, and they're like, hey, look, NVIDIA, we're creating our own chip, but we want to borrow your GPU. NVIDIA's like, sure, here's a licensing fee. We'll let you borrow our GPU. And hey, look, we know you're using our GPU. We've actually created our own software that is optimized for this solution. So why
Right.
don't you just use our software as well? So I do believe this is a way for NVIDIA to keep their software ecosystem intact in all the big tech players. So I think this is a very interesting move. We've actually also heard about it. I believe on May of 2023, I actually did a video back then where MediaTek, which is a company that designs chips for the phone industry, they did mention that they were already going to start licensing NVIDIA GPUs to kind of integrate into their own chips. So it's pretty interesting that a lot of people are following this right now, but it's something that NVIDIA has been talking about in the past. So sometimes I just wonder, why don't these analysts just watch my channel? Because I would have told them about this many, many months ago.
Yeah, I mean, if Brent Thill watched my channel, maybe he wouldn't have a $13 price tag on Palantir. But you know, it's very similar to Palantir's FedStart product, where Palantir realized, all right, the government's becoming more multi-vendor oriented in terms of they don't just want to buy from Palantir. They're going to allow other companies to procure software, and that means that a lot of VCs started funding all these defense tech startups to sell into the government. So Palantir came up with this product called FedStart, which is like, all right, we will help you sell to the government. You pay us some licensing fee, consulting fee. We're going to give you the credentials, the security to do it. And if Palantir can't beat them, then join them and make money from it. Now, here's my question. Does this actually get rid of the long-term sort of bear thesis on NVIDIA if they help Meta make the chip? Or will Meta be in a Microsoft continual payment to NVIDIA in the development of their own chip? Like as they make their own chips?
Well, I think NVIDIA makes these GPUs, which are general processing units, and they're really good for all types of workload solutions. So they're really, really good at everything. But sometimes, like Meta, we know Meta kind of creates recommender systems, and the recommender systems are focused on looking at someone's video, what they're watching in forms of video, in imaging, in forms of whatever they watch in Facebook and Instagram and all the other platforms. So those types of recommended systems might have a unique workload or software solution that Microsoft might not need. So, in my opinion, Meta will continue to buy these general solutions that NVIDIA makes, but then they know that, hey, look, we need to also make a chip that is really focused in some of the workload solutions that we have. So we're going to team up with NVIDIA to kind of help us with this process. I mean, it might eliminate the need of NVIDIA's main chip to some extent, but I do believe these cloud server providers are still going to need both NVIDIA's general chip and the design process for these custom chips that NVIDIA is going to help them make.
Yeah, long term, it's still something that's going to be another, part of NVIDIA's moat at the end of the day. And I think that's why it justifies NVIDIA for the year. Let's just look at them. I think these guys are up 50% this year. Jose, do you think it makes sense that they added 500 billion in market cap in 5 weeks? Yeah, 50%. Or because we know they're going to crush earnings. Like we know that's going to happen. But now it just feels like certain stocks need a psychological barrier. Like Palantir getting over 20, maybe we fall back below 20. But the fact that we got through it, it seems like that's hopefully going to become a new floor. NVIDIA getting past that 490 to 500 range it was stuck at for 6 months. Now it's just taken off. Do you think the psychology is going to make it harder to get it to pull back?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about adding $500 billion in market cap in such a short time is definitely crazy.
It's wild, dude.
Yeah, insane. I believe maybe valuations to some extent might have. I don't know. This AI market is pretty crazy, and I wouldn't bet against NVIDIA, but I do know that sometimes when we get kind of amazed with new technology, we believe that this new technology is gonna happen in such a short amount of time, but it actually takes a little bit longer than expected. So, and sometimes I always say I'm always bearish in the short term of things, but I'm more bullish in the long term of things. And that bullish outlook is what helps me maintain these shares in companies like NVIDIA. So I wouldn't be surprised that we might see some price correction for NVIDIA in the short term, but I do believe in the long term, this is nowhere near the market cap that this company can reach in the future.
So you're not trimming at 700? You're not taking.
I'm not. I am not.
You are not tempted to trim at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. Sometimes I think about it. I mean, I think about it, but But then
Dude, the way you said it, the way you said it's like sometimes at night I'm thinking like, man, it would be nice to just see that money in my Bank of America account versus on my Fidelity, but you don't do it. You don't end up doing it.
No, I think the semiconductor market gives us a little bit of a head start when things start to go bad. Um, when and you start to hear it a little bit during the earnings call when there's something like over inventory
Yeah.
correction.
Yep. Yep.
And I think right now, from what I've heard from big tech players, from Meta, from Microsoft, from Google, from TSMC as well, I don't get that fear of the slowdown happening yet. But I do believe once I hear that, then I'm gonna hopefully I'm smart enough to say, hey, look, I told myself once I start to see the negative signs, I'm gonna start maybe thinking about trimming or just getting prepared to cry a little bit at night.
Dude, you have the same mentality that I had in college because I didn't trim my beard at all. Okay, I just let that sucker grow, and I was just I didn't even think of it. I mean, sometimes I thought of it. I was like, no, well, just like it's. I've been working on it for years, and then I realized in 2023, I think I was like, we just need to trim it. So it's going to be interesting when you finally come to the realization because, I mean, do you have a share price target or do you just want to let it just go to Mars and then you're going to end up selling?
No, I think I want to be 60, 70 years old and still saying, hey, look, I have NVIDIA as my company because this is a company that I do believe will transform the world one way or another. And we're still getting started. I mean, I still don't see autonomous vehicles. I still don't see autonomous robotics. I don't see online. I don't see kind of avatars taking over like the drive-through and stuff like that. And I do believe all that is possible with NVIDIA's technology. I haven't seen kind of sicknesses getting cured with AI. And like I said, in the short term, this technology might not come within the next 2 to 3 years, but I do believe within the next 10 years, we're going to be like, that's insane that NVIDIA's GPUs, NVIDIA software solutions was one of the driving force for where we're at right now in the world. So that's the main reason I don't want to sell my shares because I don't want to be driving an autonomous vehicle in the future and say, I can't believe I trimmed at $700 because I was worried about kind of losing some money in the short term of things.
That's right. That's the right mentality, dude. I mean, that's the right mentality because there's so many different applications of it. Drugs, dojo, just the general robotics revolution we're getting into. And if NVIDIA is going to play any role, much less a substantial role, then there's probably no reason to really trim. Palantir, let's end off the pod with that. What were your thoughts on Palantir's price action this week?
I mean, I was excited. I was happy. I unfortunately didn't listen to the stream, so I wanted to hear from you, mainly about the AI market, right? Because I do believe I saw a lot of great news about their AIP platform. So I do believe that can bode well for semiconductor solutions as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think obviously Palantir price action is a bit insane. 50% in a week, probably not sustainable given the growth that they showed. Very good earnings, 70% US commercial growth, not earnings, not an NVIDIA type of moment in March of 2023 where, it just keeps going up and up and up. Now, maybe that happens, but the problem with Palantir is they have 2 billion shares outstanding. So you need so much volume to keep the share price going up and up. In the past 3 days, I think we had like almost 250 million shares traded every single day. Today it died off at 140 million, which is still insane, but it's just not enough. And if it tapers off, I think the share price probably will have a little bit of a retracement. But in general, I think earnings were really good. And I think if NVIDIA crushes it on their earnings, it's going to be another catalyst for Palantir because what they reported, $608 million in revenue, 40% year-over-year growth guidance for US commercial, is that companies need enterprise AI platforms in order to manage their data in a very sophisticated way. And if you're betting on Palantir, you're betting that every company in the world is going to need some type of platform to operationalize their data. And Palantir is one of the main players that's out there. Now, it's not an NVIDIA where they have the most pricing power in the world, but it is a platform that it's like, all right, if all these companies want to train LLMs and do things that are necessary to meaningfully increase operational efficiencies, you're going to need something like a Palantir. I don't know if that deserves to be worth $55 billion when the company is probably going to do maybe $500 million in profits next year, maybe. But I do think the market wants AI exposure. And given what we've seen with NVIDIA and SMCI, I think Palantir price action is kind of a result of the market just wanting more AI exposure. And that's why it's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, AIP is definitely I want to say the excitement, I think, for their overall price action. And it does seem like a lot of analysts were starting to follow this a little bit more compared to that bearish tone they had before. So, I mean, one thing that I did see is that talent is still hard to some extent. not only GPUs are supply constraint, but being in the field, I know that the talent for this is also a constraint market. So it's definitely pretty interesting to see where AI can evolve in the upcoming years.
Yeah, here's one clip I want to play of Karp actually talking about that topic around talent, because obviously he said on the earnings call that they're getting the best talent in the world, and the reason they're getting the best talent in the world is simply because people really want to work at Palantir. I've also heard from different Palantir employees that they're getting more applications coming. Like, people just want to work at this company; they want to be part of their mission. And I think that's also the excitement we're seeing for Palantir. Okay, let me pull up this one clip. Jason Calacanis also reposted him as well, which was super interesting because he's a super big VC, and he ended up reposting a compilation of basically what Karp said. Okay, I don't know if I have the exact clip, but I'm going to pull up this one, whereas Karp's talking about demand for AIP. So let's listen to at least him talk about that. So here is Karp speaking about why AIP is so important and why people actually care about the product. All right, here we go. We're just going to play this clip from Jason.
Of Palantir was always the reality of a disjointed, violent world forces Pareto optimal conditions on institutions. So I believe that everyone knows we have the best software in the world. It may not matter in a non-dangerous environment, but it did matter in Ukraine and Israel. And who did they buy? It does matter. Our software is running I'll never know what I'm allowed to say, but in among the most critical places in the DoD. If we are forced to fight a three-pronged war, you cannot do that even from a perspective of keeping our munitions ready without accurate software. So the more dangerous, the more real it gets, the more battle tested and real your software has to be. I believe it's about to get very real. Why? Because our GDP growth is significantly better than China's. Now, I know the always wrong crowd says we then should get peace, but I'm telling you that the rational result of the rational consequences of that is our adversaries are like, America's going to be stronger tomorrow than today. It's like they don't have a GDP story because they do not build these systems as well as we do. They do not have the tech community we do, and they do not have the US market like we do. Look at our results. And so as this becomes more and more dangerous, every company in the world, whether they're small, big, whether they're a startup, whether they're one of the largest primes, or whether us, is going to have to actually prove their software works on the battlefield. We love that. We want to prove, and we welcome and relish proving environments. If it was up to me, software would only be deployed at America and Western allies if it was proven on the battlefield. Unfortunately, for us, our adversaries are going to force that kind of adjudication. And then and for those of you who can't evaluate that because you don't have access to our software in the battlefield, though you could read the news and see what Israel has done and what Ukraine has done, look what's happening in U.S. commercial. You have a completely rational environment where we're deploying and growing the way we're growing with almost no sales force. And it's because it really matters. And when it really matters, the fact that they may not like my jokes or my habits, it will protect your life. And that's why we're going to do well.
Do you at all, Jose, see him as a Jensen type of CEO in terms of just how he speaks and his bravado and his confidence, even if you don't necessarily believe that Palantir could be as big as NVIDIA?
A form of Jensen, no, but he definitely has his own revolutionary takes, which I do like. I think Jensen is more visionary to some extent of where the technology can go. And sometimes, like I mentioned, I do believe he likes to look at technology or where it's going to be in the next 10 and 15 years, and maybe say it's going to happen in the next 2 years. I mean, CEO of Palantir, I mean, just listening to him, it gets me excited. It somehow makes me want to go back to work as an engineer at General Dynamics because I felt like I really made a huge difference there. And It just gets me all pumped up of knowing that, hey, look, we have this kind of software within this country to help protect us, this great nation. So it just gets me so pumped to listen to that. But overall, I mean, their platforms for just government solutions and for the military use, I think it's insane. And the amount of evolution that they showed in that first video, I believe that came out in May of 2023, I believe it was when they first announced AIP. That
Yeah.
to me gave me chills with the amount of technology that they were already showcasing with LLMs and AI solutions. So pretty bullish in this company in the long term. Not a big shareholder, few hundred shares, but very excited about their potential.
I think it's gonna be really exciting, dude. And I think, I also have a position in a company called PayPal, and hearing Alex Chris talk on the earnings call versus Alex Karp, you just have so much gratitude for someone like a Karp or a Jensen who can actually explain things in a meaningful capacity, whether it's about, software on the battlefield or accelerated computing. And you would think someone who could, make an argument for a payments app getting better over time, and they still can't communicate, right? So I think good communication is so important, especially when the market's giving you a premium. I mean, like, I know NVIDIA is technically undervalued, Palantir probably a little overvalued, but if the market's going to give you an AI premium based on the narrative, then the CEO better do a damn good job of explaining that narrative and every granular detail about that narrative, which Jensen is very good at doing when I listened to the last earnings call. And I think Karp is also phenomenal at doing that. And that itself could be a catalyst to drive the price, because people just will buy it if they believe that the CEO actually cares about what he's saying.
Definitely. It's been pretty crazy.
All right, that is it for us, guys. Episode number 3 of Chip Chat. Please make sure to follow Jose on Twitter and YouTube. He's got a very, very good channel in the context of semiconductors. And I mean, if you just listen to him, you'll probably get smarter every day about his thoughts on AMD, SMCI, NVIDIA, all that stuff. I put my Twitter in the chat. I meant to put your Twitter in the chat. This is narcissist thing. Let me put your Twitter in the chat. His Twitter is also in the description. Make sure to follow him on Twitter. These clips of this podcast will be going on Twitter as well, so you guys will see that there. And that's pretty much it. We'll be back probably next Wednesday. Earnings season messed up the schedule of this podcast, but usually Wednesdays 6 to 7 we'll be back.
Definitely. Yeah. Someday next week.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about everything. And then NVIDIA, we got NVIDIA in 2 weeks. So that'll be fun.
Super excited
to discuss NVIDIA. All right, guys, have a great Friday. I'll be back for Palantir Weekly in about 4 hours, and we'll see you from there. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Good night.